Welcome back to another quick tip here from PowerBI.tips. I've got a treat for you today because today we are going to work on the Fabric Extensibility Toolkit. Just hot off the press, this is released in Fabric Conference Vienna, and with me I have an amazing developer and PM. I can't undersell this here. This is a principal PM. Gerd is with me, who's been working on the Fabric Extensibility Toolkit and helping developers build experiences directly inside Fabric. Hello, Gerd. Welcome, and I appreciate you being on the show today.
Hey, Mike. Happy to be here.
So Gerd and I have been working together for just a little background for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years. We've already got a workload from Power BI Tips on the marketplace already. It's called Power Designer. It helps you build reports, the design side, and easily publish them into your workspaces. That was on workloads or the Extensibility Toolkit version 1. This, what you're going to see today, is the newest flavor, newest revision of the Extensibility Toolkit, and I think provides a lot more capability and speed to develop new workloads. And stay tuned, Power BI Tips will also have many more workloads coming out in the near future that we're working with Gerd and Microsoft to produce really great products for you to use in your Fabric experiences. All right, with that being said, let's just jump in. Gerd, take it away. Let me put up your screen here and we'll go right into your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, as Mike, you said, I mean, the Extensibility Toolkit is basically the evolution of the workload development kit that we had around for quite some time. And what we really did with the Extensibility Toolkit is basically we listened to the feedback from partners like Tips, like you, in terms of how to build a workload, how you basically want to interact with Fabric, and how to make it fast and easy to really build these kind of capabilities. And based on that, we worked over the last couple of months basically to really build a better version of a better improved version of the workload development kit. And this is what we launched at FabCon. We are really excited, really good momentum in terms of the audience. The Extensibility Toolkit is also trying to reach much more people than we had before. So the workload development kit was mainly focused on ISVs, I would argue, that have a data application that has a huge backend already, and they want to bring their capabilities to Fabric. But with the Extensibility Toolkit, we have now reduced the bar to a level where each and every company can basically build a new item and bring that to Fabric. And we will go into that today a little bit in terms of what it means, what is an item, what is a workload in Fabric, and then we will do a live demo in terms of how you can build one. That's awesome. The plan for today. Cool.
Well, and I got to be honest, you've been very gracious with what you said. You said I gave you feedback. It was more like Michael complaining about, it doesn't do this. I need this to happen. Like, so you're very gracious with listening to our feedback, particularly my whining around this whole thing. So, but I do thank you for taking a lot of the feedback into account. And I have been playing with the Extensibility Toolkit. I have a team of developers, and this is an amazing product already. And the things that you're doing on the getting started part, and which I'm really excited to see you working with AI to help you build these experiences, which I think will be very interesting as well. So with that being said, keep going. It's great. I'm excited about this.
Cool. Okay, so maybe let's just set the stage a little bit. So why did we even build the Extensibility Toolkit, or what is the problem statement really over here? And the problem statement is, we know that a lot of our customers are loving the Fabric platform. A lot of these customers have all the business people already sitting in Fabric, working with Fabric. But the reality is there are hundreds of thousands of applications out there, basically. The landscape is huge. And the landscape is huge based on ISV applications, but also about a lot of homegrown applications that people have just developed in-house. And the challenge with those kind of applications is, how do you now get those kind of capabilities into Fabric? That was the initial kind of thought that led to the situation to build a capability of extending Fabric with your own kind of functionality. And this is what the Extensibility Toolkit really tries to solve. Any data application, any kind of data source that you have can become part of Fabric as an item and can be put into the hands of every consumer, every customer that is already within Fabric, with a lot of the advantages basically of, having the single copy within one lake, with the advantages of basically the governance surrounding it, with the advantages of having a single place where you even find all these kind of data. So that's the goal. The goal is to bring all these data applications into Fabric.
I want to speak to that, Gerd, real quick. From my experience as well, again, as a developer looking at this toolkit, I really feel like this is a lens into I finally have capability to do things on behalf of users who show up to my workload inside Fabric. Like, so I mean, what you're describing here is great, but like I can publish notebooks on behalf of a user. I can publish reports on behalf of a user. I can read what the user has access to inside the confines of the workload or the Extensibility Toolkit. This is huge because this allows this. It's incredible. If you now dream up a tool or a solution, those can be easily added into the Fabric experience, and with a couple clicks, the item just shows up. You have it. You're physically making items in the workspace. This is massive for developers and people who want to, improve their data experience with their customers directly inside Fabric. I'm really excited about that. This is a very big move away from how we've been looking at Fabric development previously. This is totally a new way of thinking, and I really want to emphasize that.
And it's really the whole. It's really doubling down on the premise of Fabric being an open platform. Well, we have all these kind of openness in the platform in terms of data exchange. When you think about OneLake, where you have open formats that we are supporting, but this brings it to a completely new level because it is not only openness on data exchange, it's also openness on bringing any kind of application into the Fabric environment, which is basically exactly addressing this kind of promise. And as you said, I mean. The Fabric Extensibility Toolkit can bring in capabilities, but what it can do as well is it can be based on all the capabilities that Fabric is providing out of the box. So if you have an application that needs Spark, if you have some kind of application that needs real-time intelligence or real-time data processing, or that even needs a SQL database like we announced, then you can just use the capabilities directly in Fabric instead of basically having to provision them and maintain them and upgrade them on a regular basis if you want to have these kind of data applications. So that's a second kind of pillar that we are seeing. The first one clearly bringing the app. The second one leveraging the platform as it is out of the box. And the third one, and I think this is what we are going to focus on today a little bit more, is basically rapid development. So we really wanted to bring down the cost for implementation, and we have focused heavily on AI enablement of the repositories, and you will see this in the demo in a few minutes.
Love it. Well, awesome.
Everybody will see it. So maybe just for everybody to understand what we mean with capabilities, what we mean with an item, what is this within Fabric? So when we talk about the workload is really, from Fabric, we have standard workloads that we are bringing out of the box. A data factory, analytics, databases, these workloads have different kind of capabilities, and the capabilities in there, they are called items. Your capability can be exactly part of any of the Fabric platform in the same way as Power BI is today, or as analytics and Spark notebooks are today. So it means that basically you use all the bases, or your item can use everything that is part of the standard kind of Fabric governance and service, meaning you be part of the workspace. You have REST APIs, public REST APIs that we are providing out of the box for you to basically create those items. The items are enabled out of the box for CI/CD, which basically means if the customers are enabling Git integration on a workspace, they will be covered as well. It's part of the OneLake catalog, which basically means you have a data item that brings data into OneLake. This item will automatically show up alongside a lakehouse, but branded and named in an form that your end users will understand it, because maybe you have a very specific term of an application within your organization, and you want to bring this data in instead of just calling it a lakehouse. Now you can have your own kind of branding surrounding it as well, to basically understand, give the user this kind of comfort and understandability in terms of what this means. And then last but not least, you have access to all the client SDK, which is basically the front end capabilities in terms of using standard kind of dialogue, standard kind of colors, and all of that within the platform. So
can't speak enough around this one. Gerd, also want to jump in here real quick. Governance of this piece, and I had to move our icons out of the way because our faces were on top of the governance part. Let me also add here, governance is a very key point to this, because a lot of organizations don't want just apps showing up and just appearing and being able to do things, or permissionless things that show up in your application. There's a lot of governance thought here, and users have to accept governance and allowing these apps to be able to do things when they are talking to your data or moving things in and out. So there is a heavy emphasis here on doing this in a secure way with governance that Microsoft deems as this is good. And my opinion here is I've tried to get data between two different Fabric tenants. It's not easy to go from one tenant to the other. There's a little bit of friction here. And so workloads actually make it much more seamless and easier for you to go between different Fabric tenants to share data between your organization and internal to the Fabric customer that you may be working with. So this is, again, I can't stress how important this architecture is. And it's really well thought out. I really like this part.
And I think the best thing over here, or the main thing for users to understand over here is every item that you bring or every capability that you bring into Fabric gets all of this out of the box, basically, because the platform itself has already thought about, what is an item, what are the governance rules, what is a workspace, what is the capacities, basically. All of that is part of your item now, and you get this out of the box, which is huge. I agree with you.
Awesome.
Cool.
I just want to emphasize your point more. It's a good point. I just want to make sure people really grasp. There's a lot of, if you had to build all this yourself, it would be quite intense to get all this done. So the idea that it's out of the box, ready to go, that's the important part.
Absolutely. So with that, maybe let's jump a little bit into what is the architecture of the Extensibility Toolkit, and then let's get some coding going over here to let people see how it works. So Extensibility Toolkit high-level architecture. What in general, you have to think about basically 3 boxes when you talk about, or 3.5 boxes if you talk about the Extensibility Toolkit. The first box is the Fabric service, which is basically Fabric backend. Every user uses it today already. In most of the cases, you are not interacting with it directly because most of our users are interacting with it over the Fabric frontend. Nevertheless, Fabric service provides a lot of rich APIs that you can create items, that you can delete items, that you can upload data. All of these functionality is part of the Fabric service. So the top box is the Fabric service. The bottom is the Fabric frontend. The Fabric frontend, as we all know, is a web application that is running in the browser of each and every of the user that is accessing basically the Fabric itself, and it's accessing it through the Fabric APIs. So basically also the frontend in your browser is accessing the Fabric service and getting data from there, doing all the operations. So from all of this is standard Fabric. So what are we doing for the Extensibility Toolkit? The Extensibility Toolkit sits as a box on the left. And as you can see over there, it's basically a web application that you have that you built. And the web application is using our SDK framework as the basis to get integrated in into the Fabric frontend. But in general, what you do is basically the web app is embedded as an iframe directly within Fabric and looks as a native kind of component directly in Fabric. This is one of the biggest changes maybe for people that understand or that have worked on the WDK, Workload Development Kit before, because before we had also backend components. These backend components are not necessary anymore. What we are saying instead is basically you have a front-end component and you can have any API that you want and connect the API into your front-end. So there is no dedicated need anymore for us to basically provide some specific backend component. You can just write a front end and you can connect to any backend API that you have today, any data application backend API that you have today. All of this is governed by Microsoft Entra, which is basically allowing you to work on behalf of the user on the APIs for Fabric or on any other kind of API. So that's basically the general kind of layout, how Fabric works. There's one component on the top that you see in the Fabric service, which is called manifest. To make your extension known to Fabric, there is a component which is basically just a configuration file that is called Fabric Manifest, and this Fabric Manifest needs to be uploaded into the Fabric service, and after that, it is available within our environment, and we understand there is a new component, and you can basically then allow others to use this kind of component as well. We are not going too much into how to publish to other tenants and stuff like that today. There is a lot of content online already about that. If people are interested, I would recommend people to go there or to just reach out to myself or to talk about it in more detail.
The manifest part is all done. There's a couple other things I just want to make a note here. in order to do development, there is a couple settings in the admin portal that do need to be turned on with this workload experience. So one, an tenant admin needs to turn on the ability for users to use workloads inside your tenant. So if there are workloads that are available and you want to use them in your organization, there is a setting for the admins to control. So that's one thing I would recommend you look at as a user. And then if you're a developer, the manifest file is what's being loaded through the admin portal as well. So admins will also have to have some access to develop, or you have to give developers access to be able to upload and manage workloads as well in order to get the manifest to Microsoft so you can do the development there as well. Just want to point those out.
Yes.
Those are kind of some gotchas, like where do you put it? And as a developer, that's where I was like, oh shoot, okay, there's a kind of a different place to manage some of these things. There is some toggles, and it's in the documentation of things you need to turn on to make sure you can use the Fabric workloads as well.
You're absolutely right. I think, well, the main point over here, if you're a developer and you want to get started, you don't have to do this today. So you can get started in Fabric development right out of the box there, and we will see this just in a minute. But as soon as you want then to provide your solution to your own organization, or you want to provide it to other organizations, then you need to go into the governance for workloads, and the governance for workloads include that the manifest needs to be published through the admin portal into the Fabric service. And there clearly, yes, you have a kind of, some processes that need to be followed, basically. As you said, it's documented, but it's also some feedback that we gotten in terms of the other side, like the administrators that want to enable workloads then within their tenant. They had some kind of questions how they can do it and make it easier. This is, by the way, also a feature that we launched at FabCon, that where first of all, you can enable now workloads on workspaces. Before, you only could do it on the tenant level and capacity. And now we are also working on changes to make it easier for administrators to manage which workloads should be turned on within the tenant or not. Because before, everything was part of the Fabric portal and not of the administration.
All on or all off. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Excellent.
Cool. So with that, maybe let's get started and let's try some coding over here. So
let's see the code. This is the exciting part. Okay, this is what everyone wanted to see here, is jumping into the actual code on things. Love it. I love it.
Okay, so first of all, how to get started. How to get started is pretty easy. We have an GitHub repository called Fabric Extensibility Toolkit. And this GitHub repository is available for everyone. It's a public repository. You can fork this repository, or you can just clone this repository. If you start a real project within your organization, we recommend to fork this repository and then basically work in your own kind of fork. For today's purpose, we will work directly just in a clone of this. There are interesting changes compared to the first version. The first change is it's a completely different repository than the first one. And the main reason is because we structured it in a way, we took the learning and we structured it in a way that it's much easier now. And you will see this in a minute. The second thing is this repository is natively available to run on any platform. So you can check out this repository. It can run on Linux, Mac, OS, Windows natively. There are some prerequisites, and you will find them basically in the documentation. So when you scroll down, you see Node.js is needed, PowerShell is needed, .NET, Visual Studio Code is needed. But there are guidance, or there are information about how to install all of them in here as well, and the correct links for your installation. If you want to get started even easier, we have also enabled this repository to use dev container. What is a dev container? Some might ask. A dev container is basically a way how you can run a complete development environment encapsulated in Docker, in a Docker container. And the beauty is that GitHub provides a capability to run these kind of containers out of the box in their environment. So what you can do, instead of cloning this repository and installing all of these kind of dependencies on your local machine, which you will be prompted anyways, you will see this later. You can also say, oh, by the way, I want to create a new code space. Let's do a new code space with options. Let's say we want to create it on the main branch.
Yep.
Yes, dev container configuration should be the default. The configuration is in our repository, so you don't have to change anything basically over here. You say in which region it is. I typically turn up to 8 cores, and then I'm saying create code space. So now what GitHub is doing is using the code the dev container configuration and creating a container, including Visual Studio and all the dependencies in this kind of container. And as you can see, we are starting the container and we have a web development environment currently here that we potentially could use. The reason why I'm saying is potentially because we are for Fabric, we are not completely there yet. You have to do a separate step. And the separate step is you need to open this repository in your local VS Code instance. That's the only thing that is currently where we currently have a gap. Let's see how we can work on that. But at the moment, you would basically just go back and now say, let me do this. Okay, now you see in here in the code, you see in code spaces, there is a new code space activated. And the only thing that we now need to say is open in Visual Studio Code. So now what's happening is...
And just to be clear here, that just for people who understand, like people who have never heard of code spaces, it's like a pre-built virtualized development environment that's already set up dependencies, NPM packages, anything that's so Gerd, you like the designer of the repo, right? The Microsoft can say these are all the dependencies and packages and libraries that you need in order to develop on top of this. This is amazing. And this should really help you, again, get started quickly to not have a whole bunch of hiccups getting going initially. This is something that we are exploring and looking at our team to implement as well to speed up our developers to be able to go directly from repos right into a pre-built environment that's ready to be developed on, which is awesome.
Yes, exactly. As you said it. I mean, what we can do, we can go into this as well, but you see this dev container kind of folder in here. And in the dev container folder, it describes how the dev container should look like. So for example, in our dev container, we are saying like, oh, we need Azure CLI, we need PowerShell, we need common utilities, and we need some kind of GitHub Copilot. We will use this just in a second. So everything that we need, including which ports we need, is basically configured in here. And the Docker file as well, which is basically just, based in our case on Mono. And you can, and what GitHub is doing is just using this configuration and creating an online Docker container for you that you are now basically connecting to. That's everything. So no dependencies that you need to install on your local machine to do this.
Love it.
So let me see. Okay. So what do we see over here? I guess I need to make it a little bit bigger that people can see it.
Yeah, just a hair. That'd be great. Yeah, that's good right there.
Okay. So as you can see, this one is basically now coming from the code space. Do you see it in the brackets? Code space Fusi Disco is the name of the code space that we created before. And basically, this is the one that we are using. And basically what this means is you have a Visual Studio that is more like a browser than anything else in reality, because every action that you are doing over here now is in reality executed in the code space, which is running in the cloud, because the dependencies and everything is in there. So when you think about it, like you open a new, you are opening a new terminal. The terminal, I'm on a Windows machine, and as you can see, the terminal is a Linux because this is a code space on a Linux in the cloud, basically. So I'm a new developer. It's a great repository, but everybody would ask, how do I get started now? But so we tried to make this as easy as possible, and we really enabled this repository for AI, and in particular for CodePilot. You can use other tools as well, but out of the box we are using CodePilot. If you want to use Claude, if you want to use Roo, if you want to use any of the others, you can do them as well. It's just a basic configuration because all the instructions are part of the repository. So let's say, how do I get started with this repository? Let's ask Copilot.
And while this is thinking here, you're actually, so Gerd, you kind of designed, and you made a note here at the Fab conference that I just want to call out here. Our company is using a lot of Claude Sonnet 4. We love Claude. It's doing a really good job. We're finding a lot of value from it. You kind of designed the repo, like what it's thinking here, it's doing a little, you've kind of designed towards Claude a little bit, right? So Claude is going to get pretty consistent results out of this versus other AIs you may be using.
So in general, I mean, this is just my personal view, but Claude as a model is the best model for coding at the moment. I mean, I'm using it on a daily basis, and the results that we did with that we are getting with Claude are far beyond most of the other models, to be honest.
Awesome. Just want to call that
That's
out.
just a model. That's just a model. Then you also have
Yes.
Claude as a kind of agentic system that you can enable in here as well, which gives you additional kind of capabilities like instructions and things like that. We mimicked that for GitHub, for GitHub Copilot. So GitHub Copilot can also do instructions. But as you can see in this AI folder, commands, this is very much what Claude would use. Just Claude needs a separate kind of folder like .claude, and then there you would reference basically the AI information to make sure that it picks it up in the right way. It's pretty easy and straightforward. So while we talked, so GitHub came back, or the Claude model came back with some answer. So it told us, okay, what is needed, what are the prerequisites from software. The prerequisites that we need from a Fabric perspective. Clearly, we need a tenant, the workspace, a capacity, and an Entra app that can be created during setup. We never said that anywhere, but it's picked it up from our information in the repository. It also said, like, if you are using GitHub Codespace, which is what we are using at the moment, we should search at least 8 cores and things like that, and then says, oh, and I created a quick start guide for you. Do you want to get started? And now we can say, okay, it seems like there is a setup script that we can start. Before we start this, customers don't need to use AI. We prepared everything to make it as easy as possible, but every action that you need to do is automatable over PowerShell scripts as well. And in most of the cases, it's Claude or any of the other AI agents is basically just using these references in the commands to do that, as you can see now. So yeah, let's say that I want to get started with this. So it's executing our script. So the first question it asks us, okay, what workload name do you want to use? That's basically, think about a workload name like a unique identifier for your workload within Fabric. So let's do but you could also do org.my or whatever you want. One thing of cautious over here, you need to start, if you are in development mode, you need to start with org.something. Org.something is an indicator that it's
important
only
note.
published.
I got tripped up on this one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I know. Org.something is an indicator that it's only running within your tenant. As soon as you want to publish to other tenants, you need to come to us. We need to register a name. There is some validation. But in general, I would say for the developers that want to get started, org.something is the right way to go. Okay. So now we say, okay. We say, okay, so the next thing it's asking, front-end app ID is not set and use default placeholder value. Do you have an Entra application you can use? I don't know what an Entra application is, so no, I don't have one. Do you want to create a new Entra application? It told me you need one, so yeah, I guess so, because otherwise I can provide your Entra tenant ID. The Entra tenant ID is basically the Fabric tenant ID. The same as the Fabric tenant ID. We will update the documentation over here, but in general, show you where you can find this. The Fabric tenant ID, if you go to the question mark about Fabric, then you see the tenant URL, and the SIT ID in this URL is basically the tenant ID. For everybody who is familiar with Entra and Azure, this is the same ID basically, because it's in reality a single ID that most of our customers, a unique ID for most of our customers basically within the whole organization. But you will find it over there if you need to use it. So, okay, let's put it in here. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see. Okay. Okay. We got a little bit mixed up here in the command line, but because it's too big now, but okay. Okay, so the next thing it tells me is I need to open the browser to log myself in so that he can create the Entra application. So let's go and let's open this link. I need the code from here.
And this is, this is AZ login. So this is when you're using PowerShell, there is a command library that's doing all this for you. And so this is not technically from the workload. This is just using standard PowerShell commandlets to do things for you.
Correct. It's just basically Azure CLI login, a standard login procedure, and we are using Azure CLI to create the Enter application on behalf of the user. Basically, that's why we need this token. We need it in another place as well because we need to register the dev gateway, and there you also need to authenticate. You will see this in a second, but this is coming in another place. So we say extension 5. Yes, we want to continue. Extension 5 is the username that I'm using here. Okay. So now it's creating the Enter application. Now it's downloading all the dependencies. npm install is one. That might take, depending where you are, a little bit. In the cloud, it's typically pretty fast, but it takes about 3 to 4 gigabytes of data that is downloaded, like, all the Fabric, the Fabric SDK, and all the dependencies that we have in there are coming down and are downloaded to your local machine. And this is, by the way, much faster in a code space than you will see it on your local machine. Typically on the local machine, this takes, at least for me, even with a good internet connection, a few minutes. As you can see here, it was less than a minute. Okay, so we are setting up the development environment now. So setting up the development environment, each and every developer needs its own development workspace, where my dev environment, my dev workload, and my dev items will be able to be created in after that. The reason for that is it's basically segregation of development. If you have 5 developers, that it's not getting confusing to them for which, who is working on what, even if they're using the same kind of workload name. Each of them should have this as different kind of workspace. They can share the same capacity. There is no reason why they couldn't share the same capacity, but workspaces need to be different. So now let's go into our Fabric portal again. And let's say we want to use the FabCon workspace. The FabCon workspace. The workspace is always part of the URL, so we are using this URL over here. Okay. Let's use this. Let's say enter. I don't need an environment variable. You can set it, but I don't need it. Okay. So what's now happening is basically it's configuring the whole repository to be ready to get started. And you see Claude already picked up that we are pre-configured now, and it wants to start it wants to start us already. So what did it create? Just so that people understand, and we will come into what the code looks a little bit in a second. It mainly created in here some environment files where you see all these configurations that we did before being inserted basically over here. Okay, so the next step is to start the development environment. What does this mean? Before we let Claude conclude over here, I want to show you what it means in the PowerPoint presentation, because I think it's easier to understand, and then we go into the details. Okay, so this is basically the setup that you have seen before as well. Or you have seen the Fabric service with the Fabric APIs. You have seen the Fabric front end, and you now see our development environment, which is basically the diff git code space that we saw before. We need 2 components over here, a dev server and the dev gateway. The dev gateway is basically registering the manifest with the Fabric service. So basically what the dev gateway does is it's telling Fabric, oh, by the way, there is now a local development environment with this new item. Please register it. And you will see this in a second, how this looks like. The second thing is the dev server is starting. The dev server is basically on localhost exposing your front end that is then hosted as an iframe within Fabric. And after this happens, the iframe can call Fabric APIs as well as get data from different kind of other APIs. So this is what is happening now in our code environment. So Claude is telling us, okay, start development server. Yes, we want to allow this. Okay, he's starting the development server.
And it's important to note here, like when you're building the real workloads, I mean, there's things that are running on your app, as it runs. This is all for the development part. This is a little bit, you have to just kind of understand that the development server needs to be running in order for it to serve the content over to your browser, essentially, where Fabric will be running. So this is kind of you need this local machine here to kind of simulate what you would be normally doing when you publish the app into, Azure or wherever you're going to build it from.
Exactly. So you will find in here also scripts for deploying, for example, to an Azure web app. So there is code or there is scripts and stuff in here as well that helps you basically to publish everything in the future. But here we are starting the development process, and this is local, and that's why we are starting locally the dev gateway and the dev server. In production, you don't need to register run the dev server, because the dev server is the manifest that you upload into the tenant, and you don't need to run the local server, because you can just publish that into a static web app in Azure or host the code wherever you want.
Just want to call that out because it's a little bit of a difference between when production's running versus what you're doing local dev one. And it's just important to note that those things need to exist while you're doing development. And it's a little bit more set up when you're doing things from the developer side. But again, the scripts here, what Gert has done on the project to make this more modern now is trying to make a lot of that just run out of the box and letting these PowerShell scripts execute everything you need to start all the servers and the gateways, so that way it just runs easily on your local machine. Again, this is before V1. This was a nightmare, honestly. This was so hard to get going. It was very difficult. So this is very much simplified from what we were doing in the version 1 of these workloads.
Agreed. Okay, let's start the dev gateway as well. And after the dev gateway is started, what we will see, it will give us indication about what the next steps are. So registering the dev instance, we will see in a second that the dev instance is registered, and then it will give us the next steps. As you said, in version 1, this was, it was more or less a nightmare. So in general, what we have seen with our customers before, it took them definitely more than 1-2 days to set everything up just for the development. And we are doing this now within 10 minutes while we are talking, and while we are basically, while we're interacting over here. So what it tells you as well is, enable Fabric. We should do excellent. Both services are running now. Step 3 is enable Fabric developer mode. And now you can navigate to Fabric portal, open app fabric.something, go to the settings, click to the key icon, and what you need to do to enable the development mode. So let's go into Fabric. Let's do what it told us to do. So we are going here, and Fabric development in my case is already turned on. Okay.
As a side note to this, when you're in development mode and the server's running, everything will just hum along very well. When you stop the servers and you go back to working normally in Fabric, if you leave that button on, you're going to get a little error message in the upper right-hand corner that says, hey, developer mode is still on. We can't connect to the server, which is this application that we're running right now. So when you're not developing and you don't want error message showing up in your normal Fabric environment, nothing's wrong. It's just looking for the development server, and you may see a warning message when this server is not running that the website can't find it. So just be aware there's another, when you're done development, you probably want to turn it off. And that way you're not getting continual error messages of trying to connect to a server that's not there. Again, lessons learned from other experience.
So, Mike, you see, important. The question that you had.
There we go. See,
good job. Here already.
The instructions are right there. I love it. Perfect. Very, very good.
So for people to understand, Mike said okay, the development mode does not always stay on. So we have now additional kind of instructions in here as well that people understand that this is not always the case. It's a session setting, and potentially you have to turn it on again or turn it off. And then the last step is test your own workload. Navigate to appfabricmicrosoft.com, detail, and it gives you the direct link. In my case, I need to do this a little bit different because I'm in a different domain. I'm in a test domain over here, but nevertheless, for all the other users, it will work. In my case, you see the Hello Fabric preview is already here. So within 10 minutes and a lot of talking, basically, or 15 minutes and a lot of talking, we started a complete development environment, and we have a new item now ready within Fabric that we can use. Let's see how it's working. And if it's really working, when we click on Hello World, we can give it a name. We need to select the correct workspace. Clearly, as we said before, this item type is currently only available in the workspace that we have defined because it's a development environment. So FabCom Dev, let's do it over here. And, okay, seems like there is still some leftovers. Let me refresh. Let me check. This is still running. This is still running. Okay, everything is running.
there already something named workload 1?
Yeah, I'm just refreshing. It's typically.
Okay. This is the real world. This is a real demo. Like, this is not a recorded session. We're doing this live.
We are not doing the recording.
Awesome.
Not doing the recording.
We'll let Fabric refresh here. Oh, look, there's a new card there. I saw a new card show up.
Yeah,
there's a new workload. Yeah, it's good.
You also see a lot of new workloads that have already been published. So let's see. Hello world. Okay. Test Harvey 1. We now need to select the workspace, the right workspace, which is basically the test workspace. And now we can create the item.
And one of the things you'll note here, that dialog box that you see about selecting things, there's a lot more. And again, in workloads, this new extensibility toolkit, there's a lot more UI support and help for selecting things and getting things from the service and where you want to put files. You don't have to build all those screens from scratch. There's a lot better handshaking between the Microsoft ecosystem of Fabric, and then you can just call get items, or there's commands now you can just use, and you can get these dialog boxes, which again speeds up development time, because I don't want to build all the selection and API calls to get stuff. Microsoft should just present to me what I need. So again, from a development standpoint, developer lens of how this is looking, there's a lot more improvements coming that is making it easier for me to interact with existing materials and workspaces inside Fabric already today, which is awesome.
Absolutely. So what you see now is this is already coming from my local machine. This is what we call the empty page experience. So typically an item within Fabric has an empty page when it is not configured. Then you take some kind of action, call to action, or you present some call to action to the user that it should take. In our case, it's basically just clicking on getting started. And now you can see the item itself with a basic kind of iframe. You see basic information about the item over here, and you see some kind of meta information. But this is now the frame that you can change. You can do whatever you want in here. One thing to note is we have added additional kind of functionality on the platform. So, for example, you now can store item state. Instead of before, where all of the partners had to store the state somewhere else, we are now allowing the same functionality as you see within notebooks, for example, where the public API, where you can create an item with a definition. The same thing is happening now here for items that are onboarded over the Extensibility Toolkit as well. And when you save the state is saved within Fabric. The same is true when you want to save data. You have your own kind of one-lake folders, like in the Lakehouse, that you can just use, and that where you can store your data. In addition to that, you also have a lot of kind of abstraction APIs here available that you can call to do whatever is needed within Fabric. So let's say, for example, you need to clients, you need to create schedule a job. Here you find the job scheduler client, which is an abstraction of the REST API, and you can basically just say, in this workspace, this item ID with this job type should be scheduled on what kind of basis. This is list, the get all items, create item schedule in a workspace on this item, with this job type. I want to create a schedule request, and the schedule request then, for example, for a notebook could be schedule the notebook every 12 hours or every 2 minutes or whatever it is, for example. Or let's say you want to store data, want to create shortcuts. Then there is a shortcut client where you can basically list all the shortcuts, or you can create a new shortcut in a workspace on an item and with a dedicated shortcut request. So think about, like, you have data that is in an S3 account or that is somewhere outside, and you want to bring this data into Fabric. You can create shortcuts directly into your item or into other lakehouses, basically. So as you can see, there is already a lot of kind of controllers and abstraction available within our toolkit that you can use to get started with your own kind of items. So this last step is basically that AI now suggests to us to start coding. And it already makes some suggestion. We can create a new item with a PowerShell script, but let's skip this for now and let's do something a little bit different, because I think this is really where the power now comes in. It gives you another overview, gives you basically just basic information on what you can read, where the documentation is, and all of that. So, but now let's say I am I'm really interested to create something completely unique. And I don't know how to create this, because I mean, even I in this session didn't talk about, okay, what is the structure of the Hello World item, you know, and what kind of components you need to build. And I'm not the best developer. So what you can do, and what we enabled for this repository as well, is you can basically say, create a new Fabric item where you can select a lake house in the entry experience, and after selecting, show the content in the One Lake Explorer in the editor. And with this single prompt, we let this run now. I'm not sure if it will finish in our session over here, because this takes typically about 20 minutes. But what you see is we have enabled the repository to not only help you with getting started, but to help you with real coding. So this is not an easy task. Think about it, because the task here is, it needs to understand my repository. It needs to understand that I have a dev server where I need to create where I need to create a UX. It needs to understand that there are APIs that I can call, which APIs it needs to call. It needs to understand which kind of user interface it should add, because I'm talking here about some kind of components that it should use, like the One Lake Explorer, which is a typical kind of component that you can use. But it understood what it needs to do, and it now starts basically to run a script that is basically setting up the basic information, and then it starts coding on this kind of command. As you can see, it already created basic editors in here, and now it will iterate and go on and on until it has something that is basically an item that is providing basic functionality that I'm giving over here. So this is really cool, I think, because this is completely changing how you can develop and how you can bring new capabilities into Fabric. I let this run.
This is a part. Well, again, we're going to riff on this a little bit here. This feels to me, and you gave me an analogy earlier about what Claude is doing and how this works in lieu of like the internet and YouTube. Do you mind just like giving me like the analogy? Like, how do you observe? Like, you're using this all the time. You're developing it today. How do you see this as a parallel to an analogy we already know today?
So, I mean, we had a conversation before we started the jam, and I was saying, I mean, this is really a game changer as YouTube was for producing content. This is basically the game changer on how you can produce programs or how you can produce code.
Agree.
Before, you know, when you think about it, YouTube changed the way that it made it easy that everybody can do YouTube presentation. We are doing it today. It took us a few minutes, a few clicks, and everybody, you know, and we are online and we are basically presenting whatever we wanted to present. With this tool set, I have an idea with a good setup of a repository that some developer did, which we did on our side. Everybody can come and say, oh, I want to program something. And that's the real game changer over here. And now if you combine this with Fabric, where all your data sits already, if you combine this with the governance structure that Fabric provides out of the box, it's a complete new paradigm how you can think about building applications, data applications within your organization.
I like this. And I agree. I mean, I look at this, it feels like to me like Microsoft got it right with like Power Apps. Power Apps is this like low code, no code experience of like building applications or lots of applications quickly. But I feel like the implementation kind of got, you know, usurped. Like, we're not going to go to a UI. We're not going to click on buttons. It's now going to be talking to AIs in natural language and letting the AI learn the project, build the structure. And so again, I want to really credit here you, Gerd, for just the amount of work. I mean, it's not easy to get a repo set up so that the AI can understand all the instructions that you need it to know in order to build a new item like this, right? So there's a lot of things you have to do as a developer to like, maybe not a lot, but like there's like a project setup, there's README files you got to produce. You got to kind of describe the process in text form and then put them in places where the AI can understand what's being built so it can learn from them. And I think, Gerd, we've talked about this kind of at length outside of the scope of this meeting, which was AI is really good when it has patterns to follow.
Yes.
So as long as you give it some really good patterns to start from, it's pretty dang good at stepping into those patterns and adjusting them for your new needs. Would that be a good summary of what's happening here a little bit?
Absolutely, and I think this is one learning from for myself when I worked on this and helped to structure this whole kind of repository. I think about AI in the same way as I think about people. To be honest, people that need to map information. If it's the second indirection of mapping, it's becoming complex, and the same is true for AI. If you use the same words for the same things, if you build patterns that can be followed, that are structured, in a way like we do over here. I give you basic examples. So, as you can see, the folders are always called in the same way. It's Hello World. The item is called Hello World. The Lakehouse item here is called Hello World. You will find Hello World also in the configuration files. Like if you go into the items, you will find the same folder names over here. You will find the same names everywhere. And that's the whole thing. AI understands a token is for it. Every word is a token, and it matches the token, and it makes it much easier for him to understand these kind of patterns if you use the same kind of language everywhere. But for me, it's nothing different than for users. Or for users, we are very often said before, like, oh, they will understand. Just read the documentation. Yeah, AI can read this documentation as well. But what we see here is AI is faster in reading the documentation. And still, if you need to do 4 layers of indirection, it's getting confused, as any other human as well, because it needs to follow these. The pattern is not clear anymore. So what I would say is, if you want to really build such kind of repositories, follow strict patterns, and it will help AI as well as humans to get really better in coding and understanding what's happening over here.
That's a really good. I'm writing notes here in the chat, and just letting people know, like, these are good practices, especially when, again, this whole AI space for me, I feel like is this new world. It's almost like, for me, the analogy is when I started learning how to use Google for the first time, I didn't know what phrases to type in. I didn't know which keywords to put where, and certain words at the beginning of the question or certain words at the beginning of the query was more important than ones later on. And so, if I'm going to search for something around fabric, I realize now I have to put Microsoft Fabric and then search for the thing, because there's a lot of other fabric things I get results for. So me personally, I've been kind of programmed a little bit from Google in order to like search better, right? And this is the same thing we're talking about, like Claude or other AI agents. We're now in another learning phase of how do we interact with them? What are good best practices to start with? And again, I really like this one. I have not heard this one before, Gerd, and it speaks to your time in seat and actually building all the items and seeing how repetitive Lakehouse or Explorer item makes sense to have that all over the place so the AI can pick those up. That's really good.
Yeah. Cool. So this will run a little bit. I mean, we have an online demo where you can see them basically how. I have a full video where you can see what the outcome is. In some of the cases, it does it in the first flow. In some of the cases, you might still, need to interact with it. And what I can say is I have built really huge kind of items now. We have, for example, built the package installer, which is kind of MSI installer for Fabric, as a kind of example that we're providing to our customers. We can share the link about that in the future as well. It has hundreds of lines or thousands of lines of code. And all of that was done by myself and the team with AI. And it's a constant process. Clearly sometimes AI gets confused as well, and then you need to bring it back on track. But it's an interesting programming experience when you think about it. Like, I'm a program manager, I have meetings all the day about product with customers and with everything. But in between, it's really funny. You just type a command, and as you see now, it's going off. It's doing something for 20 minutes. I'm coming back. I'm checking the code. I'm giving a new prompt, and then I'm going away and doing another meeting. This is quite often my day-to-day today, where I'm saying like, oh, I want to do something. I'm giving a prompt, let it run in the background, and in between, I'm doing something else. It's like, like before, several years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when I was in development and we had the junior, I was a junior development, and the senior came to me and said like, oh, let's do this job. And
do this. He gave you the prompt.
Exactly. He gave me the prompt, and I'm like, and 1 week later, he came to me and checked. It's the same thing, just that the time difference is now hours instead of days. And it's not me as a junior. It's now basically some AI that is running, that is writing the code over here. Incredible.
One thing I'll just also note here, this is not, just my experience as a developer and working, again, Gert, I'm in very much the same pattern as you are, where we are working with a team of engineers, trying to get everyone to leverage AI. There is this pattern of jumping in. The AI is good, but it only knows what it knows. And so spending the time in this repo, having clear instructions, how things are built, showing good patterns, all of those really improve the output of whatever the AI is doing. So I want to just be very clear, like this is really powerful. Gert's using it, my team's using it. We're developing things on top of workloads, but it's not a one and done. You don't expect to show up and just have it like be this amazing, like I give it a couple prompts and you're working with it. It will be a bit of a learning curve, for sure. And you'll need to spend some time working with your team and working with the repo to understand what it's doing. It may build something that is not exactly what you want. So it is important. And again, specifically when I talk with my lead developers of my seniors, right? They're like, the AI will build some stuff that works, but it won't necessarily be to the standards or what you want to build as a company. So it's really important that whatever is being produced by the AI, you're having knowledgeable, solid developers kind of reviewing the code. Because again, it's acting like a junior developer. It has a lot of knowledge. It knows how to do everything, but it is really acting like a junior developer here. So I don't want to disillusion people by what's happening inside the space.
I completely agree with you. I don't think, we are far away from basically writing a prompt and then it's production
walking away
and you get production great quality in 15 minutes.
Correct.
That's also why we call it always like, the person is still in control, or the human is still in control, and the AI is just the assistant, more or less. And it's the same pattern over here. As you said, it's a junior developer. It by far has more understanding because it can go into the web and it will search everything, and it can basically get a lot of information that most likely a junior developer can not even get in months. But nevertheless, it can get set up in a wrong way. It does not always produce production grade quality, and you still need the person that is in the driver's seat. It's just the rhythm is changing, and the person who can code is changing. And I think this is the interesting pattern that I see over here basically emerging.
Awesome. So these are the links. So we're going to kind of wrap here.
Yes.
This is the demo for today. We really appreciate everyone jumping on. We've had a lot of people, a lot of interest, not a lot in the chat, but I've been trying to feed some information back and forth there. All the links that you're going to see here will be in the description of this video. So there's going to be a link to the Microsoft documentation. There's going to be a link to the Git repo. There's a link to any of the technical documentation like the Learn docs on all this as well, and the GitHub repo that's all available to you as well. So check those out in the description. If you want to learn more information, it's definitely down there. Please comment on this video. If you like what you saw here, if there's questions about things you need more information about, let me know. Let us know, and we'll get the team back on. We'll talk more about other areas to add clarity around how to develop and build on top of the Fabric Extensibility Toolkit. With that, Gert, I really appreciate your time. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for just sharing this with our community. We'll continue to push this out. I think the Fabric Extensibility Toolkit is actually a really big opportunity. Me, again, as a business owner and person who develops apps, anything you have that you're trying to give to other customers. If you are a business that needs to manipulate, share data, give data out, this I think is an essential part of your toolbox. You should really be considering looking at this Extensibility Toolkit. And Gert, you mentioned something in the middle of the podcast or the cast here, which was you also mentioned this could be only internal apps for your internal company as well. So I didn't actually put the two and two parts together here as well, but if you have developers in your team and you want to leverage this as an internal something that you use for your internal users, there's no reason why you can't also leverage this and build internal applications just for your company and not publish them on the marketplace for everyone to consume. You can build specific things, or maybe you have existing apps. Maybe you have a portal. Maybe you have a knowledge base or a knowledge center you want to bring back into your organization directly as a workload. You can do that now. So that's really important here, as well as just to understand like these extensibility toolkits is very useful for your organization, as well as reaching out to your customers, your vendors, people that you need to give data to as well. I think this is going to be a huge opportunity for companies that jump in early and start learning this stuff and building with this. Anyways, any final words, Gerd, before we kind of wrap today?
Really appreciate it being here. As you said, let's keep the feedback coming. I'm really interested in people trying it out, people having feedback in terms of what we did over here. If you have other ideas, just let us know. I mean, we are always trying to learn and really improve. And was awesome. Hope we can repeat this sometime.
I would agree. If you are interested more about learning toolkits, check out the links. If you want to see one in action, I'm going to shamelessly pitch my own right here. Go to your Fabric workloads area. Go check out Power Designer. Power Designer is already a workload. We were the very first workload that went GA with the Fabric ecosystem. So, and we have a lot of users. We're pretty high up on the list of the number of users in our workload. So you should definitely check it out. It's geared and focused towards developing and building reports. Stay tuned. We're also coming out with another workload called Data Marketplace. So if you have data and you want to share, distribute, reach out to me directly. We have a data marketplace coming as well. We're going to build another workload to help organizations build data products and share them directly by bundling shortcuts, semantic models, and reports as well. Gerd and I are actively working on this right now. So if you have more questions around that, please let us know. My company also does a lot of consulting. If you just want a development team to support you or spend some hours on figuring out, does a workload fit for your company as well? We are also a company that's going to offer consulting services around helping you build and develop workloads as well. Being that we're kind of one of the larger development shops that are doing all workload related things, we're going to try hopefully have in the next couple months 3 to 4 full workloads out here on the marketplace. And Gerd, one last question. I'm going to pick you a little bit here on the end here. Workloads, this new workload extensibility toolkit. When do we get to see workloads from that showing up on the marketplace? Is there a timeline of when you're expecting roughly? You can also punt. I'll let you punt on this one. If you don't know the timeline, that's fine. But if you're developing the workload kit, when can we expect to see those things starting to show up on the marketplace for other workloads? What's the time frame look like?
So I guess you mean mainly Asia marketplace.
Well, the workloads V2 basically. So there's V1 that you can already push out today, and then there's this extensibility toolkit, which is kind of version 2 of workloads. Yes. When do we expect to see those to be? So again, the expectation here too is this extensibility toolkit is new. People are starting to build this now today. I am, but as those toolkits get produced, there's going to be a period of time for Microsoft to kind of finalize your toolkits ready to be published to the store.
I don't have a formal date, but the current planning or the current thought is that the standard kind of public preview timelines that we are typically doing applies. So
okay, perfect.
So I guess that's what I can communicate at the moment.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to push you a bit on this one. So I'm going to rib Microsoft a bit.
Look, we are all.
We wanted this out today.
It's not only you. It's we want this out as well. We want our partners to be able to publish today.
Yes.
There is still some kind of learning, some kind of wrap up that we need to do to make it even more secure, to really make sure that it's not only available in your own organization, but to basically make also it more robust for ISVs that want to publish to partner tenants as well. This is the work that we need to do. It's going to be it's going to be soon. So then I'm gonna task you then, Gerd, with a little task here. So when it does go live, let's do another one. Let's go on a live announcement. When you go fully GA with getting this out or getting out the door and getting the workloads for the new Fabric Extensibility Toolkit, let's commit to doing another one of these, and we'll do a full review and start showing you how to turn those on, interacting with those workloads directly from the store. So I'm very excited about this. This is super hot off the press. Just came out this FabricCon Vienna, which was I think it was September of 2025 is when we're kind of doing all this. So Gerd, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. Thank you all for hanging out and listening. We had a lot of users listening and watching this. We hope you find value from this, and stay tuned for more. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.